It's a windy November day on the ocean.
Normally, like a nice day would be 11 to 13 miles per hour, so this is a front that's coming through.
Kim Atplanalp is a lifetime resident of this coast.
These guys have already fed this morning and now they're just chilling.
The birds sunbathe as Ocean City shines, even in its slow season.
The town is completely built up. It's a big party scene in the summer.
In the summer, this town of 8,000 full-time residents becomes one of the state's largest cities. It attracts 8 million visitors each year.
There's a long history of tourism down here. People bringing their children down here who have a week or two at the beach and get exposed to an environment that they're not used to where they live otherwise.
A beach and environment at risk from rising seas and a warming climate.
This is happening all around the United States, particularly on these coastlines that are really vulnerable. And we're one of them. We're already at sea level.
Sea levels and shorelines are always changing.
Not since the last deglaciation at the end of the glacial period, the ice age, if you will.
Dr. Donald Bosch is the president emeritus of the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science.
We can't stop sea level rise because the ice is starting to melt, but we can limit its growth.
Bosch wrote this year's sea level rise projections for the state. It details if we don't limit global emissions, Ocean City's existence is in jeopardy.
It's not a question 200 years from now, it's a question 70 or 80 years from now.
Bosch's best case scenario by 2050, Ocean City's seas will rise by a foot.
We are very much facing, in the coming decades, something that we as a modern civilization have not experienced before.
Dr. Erica Lentz is a researcher with the U.S. Geological Survey.
In the next 30 years, we're expecting to see a century's worth of sea level rise increase.
In exclusive data analyzed by WJZ, it shows Ocean City's iconic beachfront and much of its waterfront property is likely to change in the next decade.
Well, it's pretty scary for me because this is where I call home, and I am actually buying a condo on Friday.
Scott Houston has lived here since the 80s. He and Kim are seeing the effects of rising sea levels play out during storms and more frequent flooding, though they say some might not be connecting the dots just yet.
Some people are in denial about it, or they're thinking that it's not that bad, or it hasn't affected them yet.
It's happening so slow now that people don't really notice it because it's just a little bit a year, just a little tiny bit. And I think it's going to take a big event where lots of people are impacted for anybody to really put it on their radar.
More severe storms and more frequent flooding led the state's Department of Natural Resources to create a community-driven reporting system called My Coast Maryland. It allows you and I to report flooding and storm damage, as was the case here on 3rd Street in Ocean City in September. Or a week later, a few blocks away, with tidal flooding overtaking an intersection here at 5th and Edgewater. Researchers say nature has a way of showing us how shorelines want to change. We just have to listen.
Storms, and particularly the flooding from storms, gives you a snapshot of where the shoreline wants to go.
Changing shorelines are likely, and they will be costly.
This has enormous economic consequences. Loss of agricultural lands, loss of the infrastructure we have along shorelines, the need to bolster those. All of those are tremendously costly.
WJZ reveals at least $1.2 billion worth of property in Worcester County has a higher chance of changing compared to surrounding areas over the next decade due to hazards along the coast, including rising sea levels and erosion.
Well, it's pretty terrifying, especially for some of these property owners.
Because they're more heavily developed than ever. And so, you get those big numbers from assessments like this.
Scientists say dredging projects that continue to replenish Ocean City's iconic beachfront are only hitting a pause button on a fast-forward crisis.
Is that sustainable? I mean, how many years can we just keep pumping sand and keep these buildings from being put underwater?
What's the lowest lying land here? The beaches. So those coastal beaches and barrier islands are an immediate threat.
In Ocean City, as we know, it won't be here. It's really what the bottom line is. There's no stopping water.
It really depends on us. It depends on how much we emit greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane.
The beach ball is in our court, preparing for coastal change in a warming world.
Yeah, it's shocking, but I mean, it's predictable because we are warming. Like, this was the hottest year on record for the planet. And that's not sustainable. Things are going to melt. Sea level's going to rise.
In Ocean City, Paul Gessler for WJZ.